Welcome to ICOR's May webinar on the role of cross-functional teams in building resilience. I am Linda Nelson and I will be your presenter today. I am the founder and president of the International Consortium for Organizational Resilience, and I manage the day-to-day operations of our education and credentialing programs. I also serve as an expert and work on a couple of different technical committees for the International Standards Organization and writing standards for business continuity, crisis management, organizational resilience, as well as community resilience. Today we're going to address the challenges of siloed working. We are going to look at how to implement a cross-functional team approach. We will be talk about how to use a cross-functional team approach to increase collaboration and how to manage challenges of working in those cross-functional teams. We really need to consider how the coming together of minds from different teams and departments allows you to innovate, to bring fresh perspectives, and really strive towards those shared goals. Because we do know that relying on a single person or a group of people to drive innovation excludes the input of different perspectives. So cross-functional collaboration drives progress across those business units and departments. And so today we're going to try to focus on how to use cross-functional teams to increase engagement, create a sense of purpose, and streamline those work processes. As always, the recording of the webinar will be available in a couple of days. If you have questions, in this case, we will not be answering questions during this webinar because this is a recorded webinar, but feel free to send your questions in the email after the webinar when you get your post-webinar survey. Please put your questions there and we will answer them when we send out your certificates, which will be sent to you if you attend a minimum of 35 minutes. So Harvard Business Review did a study quite a while back, and one of the things that hasn't changed is that silos cause teams to miss valuable insights. And they asked 83 executives to put a price on the amount their companies lost each day due to a range of different people issues. And notice that siloed working was in the top 10, and that probably hasn't changed much since the study was done in 2016. And so they said that silos causing teams to miss valuable insights from people in other areas was number 10. And the average estimated dollar amount wasted per day in thousands was just short of $8,000 a day.
As leaders, we have all committed to tearing down the silos that we have often operated under in the past. This process is often more difficult than people realize. It requires creative thinking and ongoing effort. Sometimes these silos can be destroyed very quickly. At other times, it is a much slower process. The important thing to remember is that if every one of us does our part and commits to this approach, the results will be dramatic and will change our landscape for the future.
I want to go back and take a brief look at this subject area, which we've covered last year, actually, in our 22 webinars, when we talk about organizational design and managing change. But to understand that when change is predictable, you've got a stable organizational hierarchy that really you can support order, clear decision making, and the functional silos and really enable you to enable maximum efficiency. But when we have an era of exponential change, those traditional organizational models really cannot keep up effectively. So looking at, this is how we think everything works, but really this is how it works. And so we need to organize work along informal systems in the way that people naturally behave. And this helps to maximize opportunities to drive that experimentation, that innovation, and idea generation, and also makes for a happier workplace. So the way we work is constantly changing, as you're very aware, and organizations that can adapt are going to lead that charge. So we need to work together across our teams, not in those siloed departments. And while cross-functional work is essential to solving problems quickly and effectively, most companies are still organizing their departments functionally. And this really makes that cross-functional work different. So it's going to be very, very important for your company, if it isn't already doing so, to move wherever possible from functional to cross-functional teams. Because organizational structure has become more important than ever, and it's really key to breaking down those silos and helping your teams work together. We know that silos are bad for business, not just because they're inefficient, but also because teams miss out on creative solutions to existing problems. And from a structural perspective, breaking down silos is all about encouraging information flow and collaboration. So we need to prioritize information sharing and create systems for teams to share information about what they're working on and what they've accomplished. We also need to centralize collaboration. So it's kind of funny that you're going to centralize collaboration. Well, what they found out is that, employees are switching between 10 apps like 25 times a day on average. And this is making, really looking at making information feel disconnected. You're using tools like email and spreadsheets, video conferencing, and it's really becoming hard for members to find their own work, let alone coordinate their projects with other teams. So we really need to cut through that noise and centralize collaboration in a single work management platform, making sure that your teams can communicate directly where work happens, and then streamline their other tools with app integrations. So a lot of you, I'm sure, have used tools like Teams, and there's many other tools out there as well. But looking at how can we prioritize information sharing and then create a centralized place for doing that. So to do that, we also need to create those cross-functional teams. So we need to bring together groups of experts to solve a specific problem, or just looking at how can we put cross-functional specialists in the same room to work on removing those silos and approach those critical problems from multiple perspectives. This is also going to help your employees to forge relationships across teams, and they can also help seed a lasting culture of that cross-functional collaboration. But to do that, we need to create clear decision-making structures. We know that great work happens when employees take full ownership of their work. So by giving people responsibility as well as decision-making authority, you can empower them to act quickly, communicate across those teams, and drive real change. But in order for this to happen, workers are going to need to create really clear structures on how those decisions are being made. And we're going to talk about each of these in more detail throughout this webinar. But just remember that your structure itself is going to determine how your company collaborates as well as how they adapt. So I've been using the term cross-functional team, but we actually haven't defined what it is that we're talking about. I'm sure many of you, or most of all of you know, but anyways, it's really a method for reducing silos and increasing collaboration within an organization. Essentially, personnel from different teams come together. It can be the process of running a project that spans across various teams and functions within an organization where you're drawing on expertise across different departments and you're trying to point all team members toward that common goal. And cross-functional collaboration can happen organically or can be happen by design. You might have a designer struggling to understand the audience for a particular asset, so they might reach out to someone in another department, maybe like sales, for help, creating that instant organic moment of cross-functional collaboration. Or you can have an entire special project that could be greenlit and built from the start with that cross-functional collaboration in mind. What we do know is that a cross-functional team design increases collaboration and innovation. And so the more cross-functional you can be, the higher your collaboration and innovation can be. And so Deloitte did a study and they looked at, using project-based cross-functional teams, kind of experimental hubs where you might get people from these two parts of the organization together, the green and the blue. Or you might look at having mission-based teams supported by core functions really tied to the customer itself, making that customer-focused approach. And then you can also do, having these autonomous, customer-focused, cross-functional teams that kind of spring up on their own, and that might be the way you operate completely. So you can really look at this as more of a continuum where maybe you do it just for projects or experimental hubs or things, or maybe you have some cross functional teams in place for specific missions that you're trying to accomplish, or you really do everything in a customer focused cross functional team approach. The main takeaway here is that a cross functional team design focuses less on who people work for and more on who people work with. There are all sorts of examples. A common one for IT would be your DevOps or your development and your operations team, where one team does the kind of the code development and the other team puts it together and deploys it and operates it and monitors it. You also see oftentimes cross-functional teams for product development, where you get everybody from marketing and sales and research and development, and then you bring the finance team in, your production people in, and your procurement people in, so that you're all on the same page. We spoke in March about having cross-functional teams and as part of your incident response. And so if you're going to have an incident response capability within each of these functional areas, it only makes sense to have a cross-functional team to manage any sort of response to an incident, as well as when you're managing risk. Cross-functional risk management really matters because it helps you align your efforts and your resources with your vision and goals. It also enables you to anticipate and respond to the changing needs and expectations of your customers, your stakeholders, and your regulators. And it certainly can make you more efficient in how you manage risk and get rid of a lot of the overlap of these individual functions for managing risk separately. There are lots of case studies that we could share with you, but I just wanted to pull out three of them. One is Northwestern Mutual. So Northwestern Mutual Life is an American financial services organization. It's based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and it was one of the leaders in building cross-functional teams years ago. And so one of the things that they did when they built the cross-functional team for the first time is they followed the more conventional model and they engaged only those individuals whose roles were critical to the task at hand. But they've moved well beyond that now. And one of the things that they're doing is experimenting with appointing one person to each cross-functional team who is not actually a stakeholder at all. And so when they talked to their HR director, she said that one of their goals is to break out of the box, and stakeholders are the people that built the box. So if you want to think of it that way. She believes that outsiders are necessary as they're not locked into that customary way of thinking, and sometimes they can bring a new and fresh perspective to an issue at hand. And so they use workshops, they use all sorts of different training tools in order to help those cross-functional teams to be more successful. They've even done a workshop recently where they took designers, tech leads, and certified financial planners to explore how to make financial data visualizations less intimidating to their customers. They also looked at having a lot of their people on that team, including some of their writers, take a basic class in financial planning to help them think about the influence of the advice they're giving on the products that they're building. One of the things that they really point to as an outcome of having cross-functional teams was the fact that they took members of their financial, investment, and actuarial departments and had them study how computers might influence the business world. And as a result of this, they were able to create one of the first information system departments that helped give the company really a substantial edge way back when computers first started to permeate the industry. And one of the things that they found was that despite the global crisis of 2020, they ended the year with financial results that surpassed the record levels they achieved in 2019. And they're really putting a lot of that due to the fact that they operate as a company with cross-functional teams. Of course, I'm sure you've all heard of Apple. And what they did is they employed a cross-functional team to create their first iPhone. They brought experts together from different departments across the business to start what was to become that smartphone revolution. And they are considered as one of the greatest teams of all time in bringing about that innovation. One of the things that they say is that to see all that cross-functional work and the relationships we've forged come together in one product really made each one of those team members very proud. And what they have done is really to make sure that because Apple's about the user experience, even in ways consumers might not understand. And so what they want to make sure is that their finished products move through their supply chain and through sales channels without or with making sure that everything's looked at from all different perspectives. I'm sure you've also heard of Cisco, and they are one of the biggest organizational culture examples that established cross-functional teams to change the organizational structure from a command and control system to into a more collaborative and organic way of working. The company has developed a collaborative approach all the way to its HR strategy that focuses on the ideas of lower level managers and involves them in top level decision making. One of the things that the CEO, John T. Chambers, he's the chairman and CEO of Cisco, he says that our teams working at different levels are all cross-functional in nature. This has lent Cisco speed, scale, flexibility, and rapid replication. We had made the shift to this type of organizational structure back in 2001 or 2001, and they've been refining it in subsequent years. And they felt they really just needed to reorganize in order to break free of that silo culture so they could remain agile and innovative in their rapidly changing industry. This was over 20 years ago. So if you're still asking the question, why create a cross-functional team? Well, one of the things you'll want to consider is that we really need to get out of the environment of having these lone geniuses. That time is well past. There's too much information, too much change happening for people to be working on their own. And so we need to start looking at how can we get people working together. We know that innovation happens when people with diverse knowledge and experiences are brought together because nobody has all the answers. Even with the internet, nobody has all the answers. And so we really need to have smart collaboration to spark some of those answers. Collaboration helps companies move faster and more efficiently. They're all also by having a diverse group of people, those people are going to be more likely to challenge the status quo and to find better ways of doing things. They also fight that scourge of groupthink that we all get stuck in because it's a lot easier to be surrounded by people that think like us because everything is very calm and easy to do versus someone who's challenging us about what are our decisions. Of course, we've been talking about how it builds a sense of cohesion and collaboration, and we'll talk a lot more about collaboration. And this cross-functional team also exposes everyone to new knowledge areas and gives them a chance to improve skills. Simple things like relationship building and problem solving within that safe environment that you have at work. Today, businesses are moving faster than ever, and organizations are seeing possible competitors in areas that they didn't even know existed before. So with so many different prospects and risks, you really want your workforce to be aligned to the same objectives. If you haven't heard us say that before, this is something that we repeat. Everybody needs to be moving in the same direction. So if people are off working in 10 different directions, your company's going to break down and it's going to happen very quickly. So there's a very important need for employee alignment. It's an essential tool to manage change, and when you're working in a world of change, it's important to have everyone aligned to the same objectives, and cross-functional teams really provide that capability. The other thing that we know is that the value of customer experience has increased, where the value of the conventional brand characteristics has really deteriorated. Consider how brands today offer multiple communication channels for the consumer. You've got the official website, you've got social platforms, you've got customer service reps, you've got automated processes, in-store sales, as well as many more. So it's really vital to have alignment on your messaging, the broader value of your end product, and everything else that goes into an organization. This alignment is going to become an outcome from that cross-functional collaboration, without which every silo can reach the consumers is going to be reaching them with a different message, which is not going to be helpful to you. And really the growth of IT, of course, is changing how everything operates. So in a conventional business, IT was where individuals went to change your passwords or get help with the photocopier. That was a while back. But IT, we know, impacts almost everything within an organization, nearly every hour, and I'd say even every minute. And so this has made cross-functional collaboration between the techie people and the rest of us really indispensable. We all need to be working together. Some of the benefits of having a cross-functional teams is that you have greater agility. Cross-functional teams are typically small, adaptable, and flexible, and they all have the essential skills to deliver quickly, and they're often seen in more agile environments. What we know is that teams like this can move faster as they don't have to wait and rely on other departments or external sources. Usually they can tackle a lot of the challenges on their own, and they can start to solve them instantly and react to those setbacks immediately. This also results in better innovation and creativity. When you have people with diverse skill sets exploring a problem in different ways, you're going to find more creative solutions. And when you have different functions and disciplines on your team, it's going to result in improved creativity because of the exposure to new ways of thinking, if nothing else. So when you get people to think in new ways, it helps them to make intelligent mistakes, take better risks, and, and encourage really innovation and ingenuity. And like we said a few minutes ago, you get better engagement. So when you have a cross-functional team, they can help in tackling that silo mentality and they can really bridge that gap between the team members. It also nurtures employee engagement since individuals from every company level are working together and helps diminish that gap between, top management and mid to junior level workers. Another really important benefit of having cross-functional teams is that improved communication skills as well as team development. One of the things that we've found is that cross-functional collaboration is really a great way to introduce new ideas, and making creativity that group process is really important. And so we also know that effective communication is the foundation to any team for successful projects. And it's like an art that can make or break your team. And having good communication skills also it improves people's management. And so when you have these diverse groups of people, you put them together, it can really help people develop their communication skills. And by learning how to take constructive feedback and understanding people's opinions that might be different from theirs, and to learn from that is a really important thing that it's really hard to measure how important that is for your organization and how well people are engaged and how well they get along. And what they found is that when you have cross-functional teams, it helps you build people that are high performers who become more self-reliant and they're willing to undertake bigger challenges as well. So I mentioned that improving your communication skills also improves your management skills. And so getting to learn how to collaborate with people in different function areas, you have to develop some special skill sets to work with people who are different than you and who have different working styles in order to effectively lead a cross-functional team through those unique challenges that you'll bring to the table. And so really tying all that together is the fact that you're going to remove stereotypes and diversity issues because you start to understand the strengths of the other teams. And that sharing of mutual goals helps you nurture that understanding. And then it also helps you to break some of those stereotypes that can be a blessing for the company and can really help lead to a lot of the conflict resolution. So having a diverse group of people of diverse ages, backgrounds, and opinions can really help bring those novel ideas to the table. So we know that more resilient organizations are diverse. And so when people come together from different departments and they work together, they bring diverse perspectives and skill sets to the table. They're able to more easily see the big picture and come up with unique solutions for your customers. So instead of getting stuck in old habits, the cross-functional teams help you to break down silos, remove duplicative work, and to implement new ways of working. And a team that's created to operate in a cross-functional setting can really do wonders for your company's innovation and just decrease project time itself. So who should be on a cross-functional team? We gave you some examples of cross-functional teams when we started. But the first question really is, what kinds of expertise do you need? What kinds of experience do you need? Um, what kind of personal qualities are going to make you valuable contributors? And so looking at people who can work independently and who can make decisions, recommendations, and decisions. People that have the right skills and those personal qualities to make them a valuable contributor. Looking at having had past experience with working in cross-functional collaboration is also important. If you're getting everybody on and it's the first time doing it, it's going to be much harder than if you have people with experience. Of course, you want to have people that represent important stakeholder groups. And like any other team, even agile teams, you need some sort of a leader. And those leaders who can guide discussions, who can delegate and hold other members accountable. And being able to do that, even if those people don't work for you, maybe they rank even higher than you in the corporate hierarchy. And so then you're required to use influence and persuasion to guide others versus kind of that hammer of being in charge. And so when you're looking at those cross-functional teams, you need to look at people that have the right experience, who can work independently, that have the right skills and personal qualities, that have past experience, that represent these different stakeholder groups, and that you have people who are able to lead. So when you're trying to make sure that you have productive cross-functional teams, you really need to start with clarity. And that clarity really begins with everyone understanding what does success look like? What are we, what's the desired solution? Or what problem are we trying to solve? And what are the goals of the team? And what are our objectives and key results that we're trying to accomplish? And by having those things in place, you're going to have greater alignment, more flexibility, as well as accountability and focus. You also need to have an environment where team members feel safe speaking up, even if they're disagreeing. And this is where you need people to collaborate and work together, but you also have to not just be a yes sayer. You have to make sure you have an environment where you can speak up and disagree with things so that you don't have that groupthink that happens so often. Make sure that you've developed those clear, transparent, and consistent roles and expectations. Just even understanding why everybody is there and what they're expected to accomplish. Of course, you're going to need to regularly monitor the team's progress. How are we doing? Do we need a restart? Do we need to stop and relook at things? How are we doing? You need to make sure that everyone's on the same page by fostering that communication. So, are you seeing some challenges with communication? And sometimes people forget you need to understand your limitations. What is our budget? What are our deadlines? What are kind of those guideposts that we need to operate on? And making sure that you don't allow for conflicts between departments or individuals to slow your innovation. Even answering questions like what kinds of tools or resources do we need? What kinds of hardware and software do we need? Do we need a physical or virtual space to store our resources and our materials? How do we give people access for that? If you're going to have in-person meetings, where are they going to take place? So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, but you need to really start with clarity so that everybody's on the same page, moving in the same direction. We also know that more resilient organizations are not only diverse, but they're also collaborative. So in this next section, we're really going to talk about collaboration as being an enabling behavior and that working in a cross-functional environment go hand in hand with that. So when we look at some of these outcomes of more resilient organization, we want to see that the organization seeks collaboration with and engagement of its interested parties to enable working together towards that common purpose or goal, that you're able to maintain strong relationships with your interested parties and your team members, and that you're fostering cooperation as well, because then we have your employees that feel connected to others at work. If you want people to collaborate effectively, you have to give them opportunities to get to know one another and to develop those interpersonal relationships. We also need your organization's people to help others. So you can't have improved relationships and strong relationships and interpersonal relationships if people don't help each other. And cross-functional teams is an enabler of that kind of collaboration. This is, of course, going to give you more efficient workflow that benefits the entire organization and also just helps people to learn from each other as well. And kind of digging into the meat of it here, we need to actively engage in cross-organizational collaboration and teamwork rather than working in those silos. And we need to make sure that we're enhancing communication, coordination, and cooperation between all of those systems to build that coherent approach. Not only are more resilient organizations diverse, they're also collaborative. Salesforce.com found that 97% of workers believe that lack of team alignment impacts the outcome of a project, and 86% cite lack of collaboration and poor communication for workforce failures. And so, using cross functional teams and making sure that you've got a collaborative organization and that everybody is moving in the same direction for that team alignment should help you to solve some of those issues that are seen. More and more companies are realizing that encouraging collaboration in the workplace just plain old leads to better outcomes and a healthier bottom line. And so when you see in the more modern agile workplace, it's really designed to encourage more collaboration between people who might not work together otherwise. So the question on the table is, we started with how is your workplace designed? And so the question becomes, is your workplace designed to encourage collaboration? So whether that's in your cross-functional teams or just in how your organization is structured in general. I kind of like this joke when we're looking at, the roles of cross-functional teams. Do you think about, being like the Avengers? You've got Iron Man and Captain America, the Hulk and Thor and all these different people that are giving this lesson about collaboration and teamwork where everybody brings together their unique superpowers to conquer the challenge? Or are you someone that says, oh no, I'm having flashbacks to those group projects you hated in school where there's misunderstandings and disagreements and procrastination and one person who doesn't do anything and you're probably the person that ended up doing the whole thing. And really the fact is that cross-functional teams can go either way. When they work well, they speed up innovation and they enhance members' skills and job satisfaction. And when they don't go well, they really don't go well. We also know that cross-functional teams aren't new. With the examples that we gave earlier, even with, iPhones have been around for a really long time. Northwestern Mutual has been doing this for a really long time, as well as does Cisco. And so it's not new. And they've been successfully used in industries from really every industry, from insurance to auto manufacturing to technology. So the question becomes, how can you make any cross-functional team that you're part of or even leading to be, more functional? We've been talking about some of the benefits of collaboration in the workplace, but let's dig into that a little bit more. The first thing we've kind of alluded to already is improved problem-solving abilities. Just the idea that you're sharing knowledge with each other, which means when you have an issue that needs resolving, some people might be weaker in one area than another, and they're going to benefit from the support of the other people with more experience, even. You should see increased efficiency. That's one of the big outcomes of getting rid of your silos is having some better efficiency because when people know how to work together as a team, they're capable of dividing up tasks to complete them with better efficiency and at a higher quality. And of course, this results in your business becoming more efficient and delivering high quality work to your clients or customers. It also shows an increase in productivity itself. There's a boost in morale and the kind of that positive workplace atmosphere where people feel like they belong and they feel like they're part of that team. It helps you because now you've got trust with people and having that positive work environment where people feel safe and confident and welcome should do that because you're supposed to have healthy cross-functional teams, not dysfunctional teams, which then leads to really stronger team bonding naturally. And so having this is really built on being able to communicate effectively and making sure that you can even do some exercises and practice working together and help people learn different communication techniques that they can put into practice when they need to. It also helps you to have a higher capacity for change. And so one of the things we know is that when they can collaborate effectively, the company itself has a higher capacity to adapt to changes. Of course, we talked about making sure that employees can learn from each other. And finally, looking at trying to reduce that vertical hierarchy. Maybe if you can't eliminate it, at least you can reduce it. And so sometimes, your senior, your top management's really out of reach and you don't have any way to communicate. And so if you're looking at cross-functional teams, it should help build some of that collaboration, which helps you then to reduce those hierarchies. So we need to look a little bit about team behavior and what's the right size. So one of the challenges is that you build teams that are too complex. So when you have large, virtual, diverse, and you've got highly educated specialists, these are important, very important people to deal with challenging projects. But sometimes when you put all those people together with those four characteristics, it can make it hard for teams to get anything done. And so those qualities that are required for success are sometimes the same qualities that undermine your success. And one of the things that we know is that members, and this is from another study with Harvard Business Review, that members of complex teams are less likely to share knowledge freely because now you've just got too much going on. They're less likely to learn from each other. It's less easy for them to shift workloads in order to break up some of those bottlenecks or to help each other complete jobs and to meet deadlines and to share resources, which is all about collaborating. And so really looking at how can we build a good team and make sure it's the right size to work. And so we want to make sure that the team is as small as it can be and still be effective because we want people to be able to sink or swim together. We want the team to be able to want everyone else to succeed and to view all their goals as compatible. So really looking at how do we build the best team, but as small as possible. This has become more complex as our workforces become more remote. And we're just using the term Zoom here, whether you're using Teams or GoToMeeting, whatever your tool is that you're using. You know, people aren't taking up that physical space that they took up in a room, but people are still taking up airspace. And there's some pros and cons to this. One of the things that I've seen in meetings is that sometimes more people get the opportunity to speak, and other times people get less opportunity to speak, or maybe even are more reluctant to speak. And so, you know, one of the benefits of being able to raise your hand, for example, or it could be, and not everybody wants to have their face showing all the times during meetings, but it's very hard to read a room if you can't see your face. And so I'm one of those people who would prefer not to have my camera on all the time, but I also want to see everybody else's faces so that I can figure out what I'm doing and how, you know, how people are reacting to what I'm saying. And so it really is kind of a catch-22. When you're having a remote workforce, and especially when you have a combination, you've got people in the room and you have people within your room virtually, you really have to be much more alert to see problems. And so we have to make sure that we're combating exclusivity and making sure that we're being very inclusive in our collaboration, especially when you've got remote collaboration, because you need to make sure you get the whole team involved in the conversation. And I do know that more and more you see people just sitting out and just being there but not engaging. And we need to make sure that everybody's engaging as much as they need to. And so, you know, pay attention at your meetings and kind of pay attention to who's speaking, who kind of has the power of this meeting, and how is that power being used. And pay attention to body language. Like I said, you know, not everybody's going to be on screen, but you can try. And, you know, pay attention to eye rolling or slouching or people that are interrupting others. Or if you're in person, they're actually taking up a lot of physical space at the table. This is also important because people kind of take power control of things in different ways. Another study that Harvard Business Review did, they found that 75% of cross-functional teams weren't actually functioning very well. So this is not great. We really, you know, you should be functioning as a cross-functional team. It seems like a really high failure rate, but just because, you know, it doesn't mean we should give up on it because we just need to find a better way of doing it. And so the criteria that show success is that you're meeting a strategic budget, you're staying on schedule, you're following specifications, you're meeting your consumer as well as your customer expectations, and you're maintaining alignment with business objectives. If you're not meeting at least 3 of those, then you're probably unsuccessful with your cross-functional teams. So let's take a closer look as to what causes cross-functional team failure and how might we improve that. So the first one is having kind of a lack of a systemic approach where you need to have clear governance. And if you don't have clear governance, where there's a lack of accountability, where your goals aren't specific enough and you haven't prioritized those cross-functional projects, you're going to fail. And so one of the things that they found is that projects that have strong governance support, either by a higher level cross-functional or by a single high-level executive champion, they had about a 76% success rate, where those with only moderate governance support had a 19% success rate. So here is where, um, like anything else, if top management isn't supporting it, it's not going to be successful. We also know that silos tend to perpetuate themselves. We all feel more comfortable working with people who are similar to us. And so sometimes that even it oftentimes gets down to kind of our functional areas because we all have similar ways of doing things. We have similar visions for where we're going. And so we really need we can help solve this by putting together some sort of a governance team. And it might be called a portfolio governance team, where you've got those high level leaders that are helping to make complex decisions on those various projects in their portfolio together. And as they learn to work as a team, that attitude really perpetuates itself in the teams under their purview. So what's really interesting is they need to lead from the top, right? So it's important that the people who are leading are also functioning as cross-functional teams. We talked about communication and how important communication is. And so sometimes business teams tend to develop kind of their own language and they operate in unique ways. It can be really challenging to connect and communicate with people who are outside of your own team. So some of the ways to combat that is that no one ever says we communicated too much. So you need to utilize official meeting agendas and really over communicate and establish that common language and make sure everybody has those same goals. We're back to what we talked about earlier, and that everyone's on the same page and making sure you've got a communication plan so everyone knows how information is shared and making sure that everyone can access it when they need it. Kind of tied to that whole piece is not having a central system. So where are we storing things? So having, a lot of miscommunication, you've got different document versions. You're always doing unnecessary status updates because you don't have a central location for your cross-functional team to find your information. So we've talked a lot about how important, knowledge management systems are. Whatever tools you have, you need a way for everybody to be able to access information that they need. So establish that centralized hub where all your information relating to a specific project lives. It can be as simple as a OneDrive. It doesn't have to be complex. But the fact is you need to have something centralized where you can keep the teams organized, where you've got a place to communicate about a specific project, and where you can document the key decisions that have been made. We've also talked a little bit about having mismatched team priorities. When you have different teams, you have different skills and you have different priorities, and so a lot of times different goals for what you're trying to accomplish within your functional area. So this naturally makes it challenging when you're working with different partners because each team member has their own priorities to consider. And this is why it's so important for you to make sure that the work that you're doing is connected very clearly to your higher business goals. And so align your cross-functional teams by clearly identifying how your work connects back to those larger business goals and fits into that bigger picture. It's important to not only understand how your work connects to goals, but also how to visualize it. And so when everyone can see how their work contributes to business goals in real time, this really helps to put everyone on the same page. We know there's going to be conflict, and so you need to make sure you have a way to manage conflict or resolve conflict. And so the lack of conflict resolution itself is a cause for failure. You're going to end up working with someone you're not familiar with. And so we talked about how important communication is. Sometimes your communication styles just don't line up. And so this can lead to conflicts and issues within your team, and not having any way to resolve this can really be detrimental to your work. We know that problem solving can be challenging, especially if there's no one person in charge. So maybe you assign a project leader to work to help with decision making and conflict resolution itself as a good way to prevent conflicts from arising and to keep the work running smoothly. We spoke about how important trust is between team members, and so of course lack of trust is a big cause of failure. And so you really need to make sure that you're building systems where people have some trust with each other. And so we know that building trust takes time. So it's really important that you start small with small projects before launching into big ones. And whenever you pull together a new team, make sure you spend some time to helping people to get to know each other. A 5 or 10 minute game can go a long ways towards building camaraderie um, and building that trust. Of course, we've talked about the challenges that we've been facing over the past few years as remote collaboration becomes more and more the normal way of life. And so we really just need to get used to collaborating remotely and finding out good ways to do that. And so one of the ways, of course, is just to, use some kind of a project management collaboration tool to keep everybody focused and moving in the right direction. And again, aligned with those company goals. To conclude, some of your key takeaways. We all know that siloed ways of working are not effective, and we need to figure out how to work in as much of a cross-functional environment as possible. When using cross-functional teams, make sure to avoid challenges that will undermine your success. Collaboration is an essential enabling behavior, and working in cross-functional teams builds a more collaborative and diverse work environment. And to conclude, working in cross-functional teams will enable your organization to manage change, be more efficient, more innovative, and to work towards a common goal more effectively. These are some great references where you can learn more. And if you want to learn more, ICOR does have our courses on resilience where you can get certified in organizational resilience at the manager, professional, or executive level. We also have specific courses on managing risk. And this concludes our May 24th webinar, and we hope to see you on the June 21st webinar where we move from managing risk to strategic resilience. Just as a reminder, our past webinars are available on our website as well as on our YouTube channel. If you want to get a quick snapshot of your organization's resilience capabilities, you can go to that SurveyMonkey link or scan that QR code, and we will send you a report that we are working on that will be closing the end of May. As usual, we are happy to connect. Join our network, our LinkedIn and our Facebook. Take a look at our blog, and again, follow us on YouTube. Thank you very much for attending, and we hope to see you at our next webinar.